everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women, an organization that's founded on the premise of bringing women across the world together and share the narratives, support each other, and form the foundational structure for each other. Today, I'd like to bring to you my thoughts on women and their role in organizational leadership and how they can contribute to business transformation and operational excellence. So let's explore that together. So the greatest enablers, or even the barriers to a successful agile transformation, are its leadership and culture. We all know this. And if you look at the characteristics of traditional institutional mindsets and organizations, they assume the world is predictable, first of all. And it's also based on the idea of an organization which runs as a machine on autopilot and tends to favor a static, very siloed, and operates through bureaucracy, red tape, and executes on very few business models. And they also have matrix-like structures, more rules, more control in the way they operate. And if you look at the traditional organizations, they are often built for a world that's unfortunately rapidly disappearing. And then they keep redoing and restructuring. Whereas if you look at agile organization, and these are the new ways of working that requires a new and fundamentally different kind of leadership. And we all know the profound impact of leadership effectiveness on organizational performance and health. So if you look at leadership and how leadership shapes the culture, if you look at this, these are the biggest enablers of successful business transformations, and most of us are privy to this fact. And traditionally, we have seen in the past, in institutional mindsets and organizations, we've seen leaders more as planners on the top of the pyramid. They are directors, they're controllers. But I think it's time to explore, and many organizations are exploring new language for leadership, the leaders as visionaries, like enablers, more coaches, and catalysts of the positive change. So if you look at the leadership capabilities or characteristics of strong leaders that can lead the organizations to their North Star, as you can see here, it's about shifting the reactive mindsets to more creative and proactive mindsets, and enabling design thinking, innovation, and enabling small but empowered teams throughout the organization, as teams are the building blocks of an organization, and fostering more collaboration than silos, fostering more partnership mindsets than control-oriented mindsets. And also looking at shaping the agile cultures and mindsets within the organization. So you're empowering the teams, empowering the leadership layers, and federating those decision-making spaces. So you are not the roadblock or the only person to make the decisions per se. Now, if you really look at these statistics and this particular visual that you're seeing, this research, this survey was done in partnership between McKinsey & Company and Lean In organization. And if you look at this, it's pretty clear as to how the gap between where we are and where we would like to be is quite wide. And this is because it's quite common to view women's unique contributions to their organizations or even society from a generic lens. But an unfortunate consequence of this essential or essentialistic approach is that women are always associated with maybe I shouldn't say always, but most or more often associated with an inferior characteristic of the binary opposition as women are emotional, they're not rational, women are impulsive, they are not goal-oriented or goal-directed, etc. There are quite a few adjectives that we very unbiased, you know, we don't have the unbiased lens when we are looking at that gender imbalance. So for every, if you look at this statistics as a whole, for every 100 men promoted to leadership, it could be management, it could be C-suite. But let's just talk about the first layer of being promoted to a manager. Only 85 to every 100 men are promoted. And this gap was even larger for some women. If you look at women of color, only 58 Black women and 71 Latinas were promoted, again, to every 100 men. And if we dig in, we will find some, similar statistics for women of color overall. But as a result, women remained significantly outnumbered at the manager level. And this is at the beginning of 2020, the survey. And they held just 38% of manager positions. While men held 62%, we are looking at almost 100% variance here. And due to challenges created by the current COVID-19 crisis, as many as 2 million women are considering taking a leave of absence or even leaving the workforce altogether because of societal and domestic constraints and limitations. Now, the progress that we have made in the previous 5 years, 7 years, men and women were at least positioned to those leadership layers in a similar balance scale. At least the organizations are attempting to. But due to the current situation, if the women are forced, again, from their own perspective, to leave the workforce, we'll end up with far fewer women in leadership and far fewer women on track to be future leaders. Because if they're not promoted to an immediate management layer, you're not looking at future leaders at all. And all the progress we have seen over the past 5 years would have been erased. So there is an immediate need for us to really come together as a group to look at what it takes to build that layer of women leaders so we have a balanced, well-represented organizations for a better future, for better operational excellence. So if we move beyond statistics now, for the past 5 years or so, we made slow but steady progress in women's representation in leadership layers. But there is a concept called the Broken Rung, and this is the first step up to manager continues to hold women back. And now with COVID-19 crisis, of course, it's threatening to erase the gains of all the past years and the progress that we have made. And if you look at the Broken Rung and the challenge that it offers, women will always struggle to climb to the top of the corporate ladder as long as the first rungs are broken. And we've all heard the glass ceilings in the past. And that is the invisible barrier that is keeping women from making it to the top management positions. The broken rung, however, starts a lot earlier. We are talking about the very first step towards a management or a leadership position. And this refers to the obstacles that are keeping women from advancement, right at the start of their corporate ladder. So the biggest obstacle women faces on the path to senior leadership positions. Only if you look at the statistics, for every 100 men promoted and hired to a leadership position, only 72 women are promoted and hired. And this broken rung phenomenon results in more women getting stuck at entry level and very few women becoming managers. And we are looking at a broad landscape of across several organizations. And if you extrapolate that number or that statistic down the line, the men are upholding 62% of management positions, while only 38% are held by women. So where there are fewer women than men in lower management positions, there are fewer women getting promoted to senior management. So no wonder women are not making it to the corporate ladder in terms of the balance in the C-suite and executive positions. And to compound the issues, many companies are even unaware of the problem, right? You know, if you're not, if you're aware of a situation or a problem, there is a hope that it can be addressed. Unfortunately, most organizations are completely unaware of the imbalance and the subsequent impacts that it might have on the organization. And if you look at, just as a reference, if you look at a reference point here, right, if you look at the statistics, if women are promoted and hired to first level management layers at the same rate as men, right, let's take that for an example, we will be adding 1 million more women to management in corporate America over the next 5 years. And that's huge. And that's the impact and that's the progress that we all need to have and need to make as a society and as an organization. So I think it's time for us as hiring managers, as leaders, as colleagues, it's time for us to bring this awareness to the front and center of our operations. So that's call to action. So first of all, why should we have more women in the leadership layer, right? Beyond the gender equality and both genders need equal opportunities, but let's explore why it matters to have equal number of women, if not more, in the leadership layers. And also, I think we all need to keep in context that it becomes rather challenging for a woman to first reach a position of leadership, but then she struggles for acceptance and credibility in that layer as a leader. So, that should be the center of context here anyway. But if you look at the why and why it matters to have women, it's widely researched, and there are several documented references that women's presence on management teams and in leadership spaces is generally associated with a stronger social commitment and a more participatory leadership style. And then one benefit of female leadership is an increase in measures to promote work-life balance, which is extremely critical to retain talent, and also which is very important for country development as well as for improving families and quality of life in general. And with women at the leadership layers and at the helm, companies are more inclined to introduce family-friendly policies, HR policies, and these new female leaders have a great impact and influence on their organization's activities than they would have in a traditional company with more imbalanced, gender imbalanced leadership layers. And also, greater women decision-making power could lead to a new strategic orientation that differs from plans designed by exclusively men-dominated teams. And there are several researchers out there and a huge amount of data out there showing that women in leadership positions believe in more participative and collaborative approach, which involves working with people rather than making people work. There is a huge stark difference there. And women are also good transformational leaders. than you know, where they contribute to the organizations than in the organizations where there are just men. And they use nurturing, caring, and engaging approach towards all their employees and to the organization in general. And they're known, we all know, for more and high emotional intelligence, and they also understand the motivational factors of the employees, and they can manage more effectively, and then based on the diverse culture and the knowledge about the diverse culture and the background. Women leaders can absolutely provide, and they've proved themselves as able and competent visionaries. And we are seeing that with women-led nations in the COVID situation today, that we see the decision of appointing women at critically and strategically important positions reaffirms to us the fact that women leaders can provide for that effective leadership. And organizations of all sizes and magnitudes are seeking today to improve their diversity strategies, which is a great news and a great strategy in general. And they are striving to advance women in her leadership journey, which is great for business and good for the society as a whole. So we are trending towards a more inclusive culture and a more balanced culture. But again, in the context of the current COVID-19 situation, there is an urgent need for us to enhance those strategies as more women are considering leaving the workforce. And this is the study which is saying it. It's the news that is carried to us that is saying it. So how do we create women leaders? Rather, how do we develop women leaders? If you look at some of the pointers here, and these are some of many, and the HR policies and development strategies can draw from these. So it's about setting a goal to include more women in the first level management promotions, and being very intentional about it, being very mindful about it, and even expanding that knowledge and training to hiring managers to look for women leaders, identify them, develop them, and promote them, and always be cognizant of that balance within the organization. And also looking at early identification of any inequality, because as the inequality increases, the gap increases, it's often very challenging to close it. So identify those inequalities early in the game, and constantly revise your policies or review your metrics and numbers to see where the inequality might occur. And also, don't wait for the title, and this is for women themselves. Don't wait for an explicit invitation to take on additional responsibilities and be a leader. And your title should not determine when or when not to take up that role. Rather, when you can, expand your role, and that automatically identifies and puts you on the path of leadership. And also look at training your hiring managers and evaluators for unconscious bias. Not every one of us does an act of discrimination or bring one gender versus the other consciously. There is an unconscious bias, and several HR policies have very explicit trainings for unconscious bias. So bring it in and train them. And increase diversity in hiring and promotions. Again, this is not a nice to have. It should be a non-negotiable must-have policy within an organization, that you must look at diversity in hirings and promotions very equally. And also looking at broken rung gaps are, so how many women are in the first layer of management versus the higher layers of management. So looking at that even ground and balanced, well balanced and well represented landscape. So looking at those spaces of broken rung and how they can be filled, the gap can be filled. And also looking at how can you train women in taking on those leadership roles. And sometimes those needs are unique for each woman, identify them. And how can you build more communities of practices or the support groups, learning groups within the organizations to ensure women have a more psychologically safe space to come together and support each other and rise up to the occasion when the opportunity presents itself. So, having said that, it is also very important to have diversity within women leadership layers. So, again, if you have women and enough women in the leadership layers, but you don't have diversity within that group, it offers different flavor of challenges. So look to create a diverse group of women leaders. So by looking at diversity of thoughts or ethnicity, race, backgrounds, culture, or different expertise, whatever it is, try and expand the landscape of that layer. And also looking at the leadership initiatives for women of color. We talked about the statistics of women of color and their advancement into the leadership layers. Less and or fewer women of color get into leadership layers if you look at the statistics as a whole. So how can you bring in the initiatives and development programs for women of color, and again creating psychologically safe space for them to raise their hand should there be a challenge, and also looking at advancing diversity in women leaders should be considered an opportunity, not a burden, nor nice to have initiative, but it is a must have, it is a business imperative to include women and to bring diversity in that layer. So that's should be the relentless effort from all of us in the organization. It's a corporate responsibility, and it is shown. Research shows that it contributes directly to a greater level of transformation in the business, and also to a steeper curve for operational excellence. So I invite you all to pay attention to this space and bring in more women leaders, you as hiring managers, you as leaders, you as colleagues and participants. If we all embrace this, organizations embrace it automatically. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And please check out Lean and Agile for Women. It's a not-for-profit community building organization, and we are huge advocates of bringing more women into the organizations and to speaking opportunities, but also bringing them to a leadership position where they have a seat at every decision-making table. Thank you.